All right. So, as some of you may know or have seen on YouTube, this week, the bear was killed. And because of that, I'd like to welcome you to Wicked Tougna, episode 2. That's right, I'm Deepwater D's, joined as always by Tougie, a.k.a. the Massachusetts Basset Hound. Today we're going to talk about how to catch a pufferfish with a treble hook. But before we learn how to catch a pufferfish with a treble hook, let's go over some safety questions. Question numero uno,
I
Tougie.
again wasn't warned of this.
Well, question number 1, what is the most poisonous fish in the world?
I feel like I know this, but I'm gonna go with the. I don't know. I got nothing. There's just no comedy to be had here from me.
Well, it's the pufferfish, and that's why we're going to be using a treble hook.
God damn it! God damn it! I was gonna say, God damn it!
And it's always important to remember when catching a pufferfish, if you learn the right way to fillet, you will be okay. Question number 2, this kind of fish has eyelids.
Trout.
Wrong, it's the shark.
Yes, that makes sense. Deepest, bluest.
That's right. If the fish starts to blink, get out of the drink. Question number 3, this type of fish is the fastest fish.
Barracuda.
Unfortunately for heart fans everywhere, it is the sailfish. It goes real fast, like a sailboat.
Yes.
This is the largest fish.
Largest fish.
If it helps at all, it's cartilaginous.
No, a whale's a mammal. Fuck. Don't you mention cartilage. That doesn't help. Doesn't help at all. The largest fish. I got nothing. I'm sorry. I got nothing.
Well, it's the whale shark.
50%.
The shark so big, we named it after a whale. And our final question.
Which isn't even a fish.
Exactly.
Son of a bitch.
All right, so we got 2 more questions. The final. It's not final, it's whatever. All right,
penultimate.
This shark is the penultimate question.
More like
This
the
shark
finultimate, am I right?
Exactly, the penultimate question. This shark is not only responsible for the most attacks worldwide, it is also capable of swimming in fresh and salt water.
It's not the Great White, is it?
No.
It's not. At all. No. Name escaped me. I got nothing.
It is the bull shark, the original subject of the
my
book
guess.
that Jaws is based on. But we replaced it with a great white because, let's be honest, bull sharks ain't so photogenic. So our final question of
Speaking
the
of that,
day.
I'm shocked they didn't go with like a hammerhead. Because it's like the coolest shark. Look at this thing.
Right? I mean, I've seen street sharks. The hammerhead's obviously the one that cleans up.
Yeah.
He's got the biggest biceps. Although in real life, sharks do not have biceps.
God, this podcast is so educational.
So educational. Our final question.
Mm-hmm.
Across, and this is how we're going to tie it all together, kids. Across all 4 major sports leagues, there are 3 teams named after fish. Can you name them all?
Florida Miami Marlins.
Boom, there's 1.
San Jose Sharks.
There's 2.
Oh, okay. Named after fish.
Oh, the last one's real tricky. Can you, winks at camera, reel it in?
Why is this escaping me? All right, so we're only talking hockey, football, basketball, baseball, right?
Yes, the Big 4. They are a Florida-based team.
Oh my God, why? Oh, the Miami Dolphins.
Nope, that's a mammal.
Damn it, it is.
Got him.
You did get me with Florida.
It's still, there is a third team. It is fish-based. It is Florida-based. They are in the Big Four. If it helps at all, it is cartilaginous.
That doesn't help at all. No, it doesn't. Didn't help before. It doesn't help now. God, I've gotten every question wrong. Like, again, we've talked about this. Wicked Tougna is a journey. It is. Like, we'll get there.
It's two men in a metaphorical boat.
All right. So, again, we had the San Jose Sharks. We had the Miami Marlins. Why can I not think of it's not a football team?
Correct. That is right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not fish.
Is a manta ray a fish, or is it a manta ray?
Oh, it is a fish. It is a cartilaginous fish. That's right. You have answered every question correctly. And you know what you win, Tougie? You win a chance to hear the intro.
Yeah.
Women want me, fish fear me, baby. If you're headed to the kitchen, could you hear me? Women want me, fish fear me, 'cause I'm tapping on the glass on the Wicked Tougna podcast.
All right, we're back from the intro. This is Deepwater Deej, and I'm with Tougie, a.k.a. the Massachusetts Basset Hound. And today we would like to thank our sponsors at Manscaped for
We would.
helping us learn how to catch a pufferfish with a treble hook.
Little did they know when they signed on with the hockey podcast, Deej, what they were actually in store for.
Yeah, today we're going to learn how to keep the treble hooks away from your pufferfish with the all-new Lawnmower V4.0.
It's true.
The Lawnmower V4.0, the ultimate in technology for keeping the hair clean down there. That's right. You can use code Tougie, Tougie, for 20% off. Be a cool dude. Shave your pubes. Manscaped, your balls will thank you.
When you're diving for lobsters and you get eaten by a whale, do you want that whale to know? Do you want that whale to know how unkempt you are? Or do you want that whale to say, this guy takes care of himself, I got to give him a second chance? I'm sure that's what
actually
happened.
We were actually just talking about this, and I learned a new fact that only somebody from Maine would know.
Uh-huh.
And I learned that people that fish for lobsters are called lobstermen, which
Correct.
I thought was just the scientific term for crab people. But go figure. Lobstermen. And some guy got eaten by a whale.
Yep.
And then was spit back on land. And on top of everything, he's a great liar. So it's crazy.
So again, shout out to Manscaped. Again, feel free to check out the lovely Lawnmower 4.0. Later on this month, you'll be hearing about some new stuff as well from our friends at Manscaped. But the Lawnmower 4.0, we've talked about it ad nauseum, but you're going to keep hearing about it. It's got a flashlight. It's waterproof. So many good things about it. And of course, Manscaped. Not just for Deej. Manscaped is for everybody. For everybody. Manscaped.com, 20% off using code Tougie, free worldwide shipping. Again, not just for the Lawnmower 4.0, but for everything. So check out Manscaped. And we thank those of you that, encouraged Manscaped to stick with us here. Thank you very much.
And it works. I shaved 1.5 seconds off my 200-meter butterfly.
Oh, God. And if you have your success stories, feel free.
Feel free to share your inspirational manscaping success stories. Did you make it look like a lobster, an elephant? Did you carve your name into it? Let us know.
Did you carve someone else's name into it? Now there's the real 4D chess match. That said, that segment could very well be another recurring segment on the show. But speaking of recurring segments, Deej, no viewer questions for this episode. Why? Well, we shut him down. We don't want to hear from you anymore. Stupid questions. Stupid. I got to spend this morning doing my best lumberjack impression. As has been discussed, I have recently moved into a new house with a girlfriend. And boy, some people never have to worry about this issue. But as it turns out, folks, if you're going to get a house, or you're going to buy a house, keep this in mind. that you can't have trees too close to your home. It's a hazard for a couple of reasons. What if it falls and lands on your house? Or, the more likely issue, roots can get too close to your foundation and ruin the foundation of your home. So we got the joys today of cutting down trees, cutting the branches off of said trees, feeding those through a wood chipper, and now hopefully finding someone at a lumber yard who wants to buy freshly down trees to turn into planks, to turn those planks into a home in which someone will hopefully not plant trees too close to the foundation of said home. So we're a bit short on time. It's more of a sprint today than it is a marathon, unlike some of our other episodes. But hey, that's okay. Because, Deej, we have some stuff to talk about in general hockey talk before getting to the series breakdowns.
Yeah, that we do. Some GHT.
Yeah.
We have, we got some Norris Trophy finalists. We've got some Hart Memorial Trophy finalists. That's right. Remember your heart. It's there. We have Jack Adams Award finalists.
The Jack Adams?
We've got a new head coach, and we've got a Fleur de Leon. What does that mean? Find out with Muzzy. The number one way to learn French as a child. That reference may be lost on Tougie, but I know some of you listening right now are laughing your ass off because you remember Muzzy. So we tried. We'll get there.
So, shall we start then with these trophy finalists? Because as you know, if you've been listening to the show, Deej and I, all season long, at the beginning of every month, gave our updated opinions on who we thought would win each award. And we'll start off with the Norris here first, as the final three comes down to Adam Fox, Victor Hedman, and Cale Makar. Deej, I mean, we said pretty much all season long that Victor Hedman was the favorite. Still think he's likely to win it. That said, I mean, should Adam Fox win it? Probably. Cale Makar's got a decent shout. And obviously there are people, Charlie McAvoy, who were left out of the conversation. But again, we talked about that. With an award like this, with as many good defensemen as there were, you're going to have that issue of people being left out of the conversation. There are only 3 finalists. For example, I mean, Deej, when's the last time? I'd be intrigued to know this answer. When is the last time the highest scoring defenseman wasn't named a finalist to the Norris Trophy? Because Tyson Barrie outscored Adam Fox. Fox with 55 games, 47 points. Barrie had 56 games, 48 points. So Tyson Barrie, I mean, I'm not saying he should be a finalist, but it's interesting that a top scoring defenseman wasn't here in terms of the finalists. And again, we talked about like, hey, Jeff Petrie, Dougie Hamilton, Shea Theodore, guys like this. But at the end of the day, Fox, Hedman, Makar. Again, I think it should go to Adam Fox. I'm pretty sure Victor Hedman's going to win.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. And I think obviously, I didn't see all 3 finalists. If I'm not mistaken, Jay Fresh put up something where he was like, these 3 were actually the guys that should have been. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Charlie McAvoy, Jake Chikrin, and it might have been Darnell Nurse, maybe. Like it was Mackenzie Weegar was on there as well. It was just nobody that ever gets brought up in the conversation. Because it's just, this is like, for whatever reason, the association of people who vote on this, they go for the points unless you're riding McDavid's coattails.
Yeah.
So I give it to Mackenzie Weegar. No, I think Victor Hedman definitely ends up with this. I think he would be the runaway favorite if it wasn't for the black cloud of everyone hating Tampa for salary cap reasons, including one. And I'm changing his name right now, and I hope you at home join along with me. One Douglas Hamilton. So I don't know. Obviously Adam Fox, in a weird way, coming out of nowhere on a heavily underperforming New York Rangers team and just dominating the way he did. I believe he actually, in terms of Jay Fresh numbers, was the number 1 defenseman in the entire NHL.
I looked that up. He posted the WAR percentage, so the wins above replacement percentage, basically to show, hey, how these guys compare. Adam Fox, for example, was at a 99% out of 100. Cale Makar was at a 98. Again, this doesn't tell the full story, but it's a simplified metric. Whereas Victor Hedman was at a 48. In that, injuries this season as well. He didn't have that good of a year. And in comparison, Charlie McAvoy was at a 100. Adam Pelech is at a 98. Even Chris Tanev had a phenomenal defensive season for Calgary. Mackenzie Weegar was up there as well. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, there were going to be teams that were going to be upset, but it seems like it's going to go to Victor Hedman. It's just, that type of award where name value still means a lot. However, that brings us to the Hart Trophy, where name value can't exactly be a deciding factor. Now, can it? Because we have Nathan MacKinnon, Austin Matthews, and Connor McDavid as the finalists for the Hart Trophy, and it's Connor McDavid's award.
Yeah, that's a two-horse. Even if you want to argue it's not, that's a two-horse race. We'll call that the old, hey, Austin, we know you're still alive. We'll call that, there's that nomination. I guess maybe because he won the Richard.
I mean, I'd say that's why he's there.
That makes
sense. Which
sense.
not saying it's undeserved.
But that team is it's Connor and the Condors, which would be a sick band in the 50s or 60s, but that's legitimately what that team is, and you got to give him the MVP award if you're not going to give it to Alexander Barkov.
Fair enough. I mean, or Jonathan Huberdeau.
So actually, it was pretty interesting. I don't know if you saw, because I do want to dive a little bit into the JFresh numbers on each one of these, but I don't know if you saw JFresh's heart breakdown, but it was number one was Connor McDavid at 100%. And then in second place, and tied for second as well in terms of WAR, were Barkov and Marchand behind McDavid, which is crazy to think about.
I think Austin Matthews is right up there as well. Mark Stone was up there for one of the highest percentages. So,
yeah, okay, yeah, I did. I missed the in my scroll down. I skipped over Austin Matthews at 100%. Yeah, Mark
and that's
Stone
the thing, right? Like you name
99%.
off a number to be like, oh, what's the WAR percentage for McDavid? 100. What's it for Matthews? 100. But obviously, you look at the metrics; they're judged on a different level, on a different scale. Like obviously, if you look further in depth, Matthews, finishing a goal, scoring numbers are better than Connor McDavid, but obviously McDavid does some slightly different things. So, that's to say that this player can be a top tier echelon player, and not everyone has to fit in the, in the same sort of bracket. Those percentages take into account how, how uniquely talented these players can be, I suppose. Just, again, not overly simplified.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And unfortunately, I think the thing we are missing the most here is advanced stats for coaches. That's got to exist, right? Do you think we can become millionaires?
In some way. In some way, it has to exist. And what Deej is referring to here, the Jack Adams finalists were also named Rod Brind'Amour in Carolina, Dean Evason in Minnesota, and Joel Quenneville of the Florida Panthers. Now, the Jack Adams is a tough one because how do you view it, right? Like we have the President's Trophy winning head coach not here, right? Jared Bednar, nowhere to be found with Colorado. So you look at Carolina. There's no denying Rod Brind'Amour is one of the best coaches in the league. He is top 3, top 5, top 10 minimum. One of the best coaches in the league, no doubt. In terms of looking at that roster, though, I could see the counter argument for Brind'Amour being, well, he had a sick roster, and there you go, right? That's kind of the takeaway for him. Dean Evason from Minnesota, it's kind of a similar thing where it's like, okay, the team overperformed, but I feel like more people give Kirill Kaprizov the, I feel like more people give him the credit over the head coach or any of the systems that they might have played. And then you get to Joel Quenneville, which, again, I look back to the conversations we've had about Joel Quenneville, how much he's meant to that team's turnaround. It's a tough call because you look, and I remember the beginning of the season, right? Minnesota was that fringe team. Like we all thought in the West, Colorado, Vegas, probably St. Louis, and then Minnesota, Arizona, or maybe one of the California teams figured it out like LA or San Jose. So Minnesota was a bubble playoff team. Florida as well, a bubble playoff team. Like, okay, Carolina's going to make it, Tampa's going to make it, and I think a lot of people thought Dallas was certainly a top 3 lock, which leaves you Florida, Nashville, Columbus as the teams that were expected to make it. So it's an interesting look there where, 2 out of 3 coaches weren't really necessarily guaranteed to make the playoffs. But do you take that away from Rod Brindamore to say, well, your team is expected to make the playoffs, so we're not going to give you that much credit? Like, I don't think that's fair. But it's just such a very weird and bizarre award to look at and to try and hand out, Deej.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. So I think this should be Brindamore's award.
Mm-hmm.
I think he ends up not winning it because of his officiating comments 3 weeks ago. Because if there's something I know about
these
the
are
NHL,
voted on
they're
before
kind
the
of
playoffs.
secretly...
Otherwise, I'd agree with you.
Oh, so the whole voting happens for the playoffs. I mean,
Yes.
the NHL could still sandbag this. They haven't announced a winner yet.
It's true.
And if there is one thing the NHL is, it's weirdly vindictive against people who speak out against them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I'm going to be a homer here because I see the player that Barkov has turned into, the player Huberdeau has turned into, the player that 7th round pick Mackenzie Weegar has turned into under Coach Quenneville. I saw the performance he got out of Duclair. I saw how he was able to use Verhaeghe correctly. I saw how he responded to the loss of Aaron Ekblad. I think he did a really great job. That said, I think that Evason deserves a much greater look at this than he's getting because, you look at this and you say, oh, well, Minnesota, it's the Kirill Kaprizov show. And you don't get to where Minnesota got on the coattails of one player. Mm-hmm. The coaching has to have a large part of it and being able to immediately mesh around that player. And so it's impossible for me to pick, but I hope Quenneville wins so that way I can see it on a billboard or something. I don't know.
In terms of my opinion, I mean, I don't really care who wins out of the 3. I think they're all deserving. My award would have gone to Barry Trotz. So there you go. Speaking of head coaches really quickly, we have 2 other minor talking points to discuss really quickly before we talk about the playoffs. Columbus has promoted assistant coach, former NHLer Brad Larson, to the position of head coach of the team in the aftermath of John Tortorella leaving. Brad Larson has been with that organization for a decade, essentially. I mean, former NHLer, former Portland Pirate, by the way. That, I mean, he was a long-time NHLer for the most part. I mean, he was a part of the long-time NHL, AHLer. Like he bounced around. He wasn't like this long-term NHL option. But again, he's been there for a long time. And the feedback or the response from Blue Jackets fans seems to be mixed. Like there are some who are like, hey, this is perfect because this is, a coach where despite a minor kerfuffle, we'll say, with Patrick Laine that was quickly smoothed over, he seems to be a really big team favorite coach. And a lot of people were there to support the move with him at the press conference. Like it seems to be a really popular move. The counter argument is that it's not the big splash this team needs. It's not the big wholesale change this team needs. And there are a lot of Blue Jackets fans who are worried about the idea of a team-friendly coach because, hey, the best results aren't always when everyone likes their boss. Like, that's just a fact. And the big comparison I saw was with Freddie Kitchens and Freddie Kitchens and the Cleveland Browns and a lot of, just a lot of different moves that we've seen in other sports. when it's the idea of, man, everyone loves this coach, but the results just aren't there. So I don't know. I think it really is a wait and see kind of move. I'm not surprised that this was the move the Blue Jackets made, though. I mean, we knew Gerard Gallant wasn't going to happen. There's always that conversation of go for a new head coach instead of the same old guys. And then a team goes for a new coach, and then people say, oh, well, why wasn't it one of the same old guys? So it's just one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see. I mean, I don't think there's that much optimism surrounding the Blue Jackets right now as it stands, so that probably doesn't help.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I think it's difficult as a Columbus fan for you to get excited about a guy named Brad that was just lying around. Like, he was already there. He was on the bench. And I think the issue is with coaching being such a problem on this Blue Jackets team and him being directly under Tortorella for 7 years. Like, I mean, why do you hire Brad Larson? Is it because the day that Torts walks out of his office, he comes in, he's like, oh, thank God, it's been 8 years. That guy was an asshole. Let's do everything differently. I couldn't wait for you to get rid of that guy. That's why I've lived the last 8 years of my life in complete misery. Like, I don't know. So it's just, there's something weird about it that seems to me like maybe Columbus doesn't exactly see the forest for the trees here. Ooh, I used that correctly for the first time in my life. So,
I mean, it could also be, too, he's not going to be that expensive.
Yeah.
That's probably another factor in this. But, Deej, at the end of the day, you're looking at a guy who in 1994-95 was a part of the Canadian under-18 team. Oh, and the World Juniors? No, that played in La Copa Mexico.
Oh, shit. La Copa Mexico?
A tournament that featured other great players such as Daniel Briere, Mark Savard, and Jerome McGinley, who had 13 points in 5 games. So if that, oh, and J.S. Jaguar was in goal. If that, for 2 of the 5 games, if that isn't a winning pedigree, Deej, I don't know what is.
Oh, man, Juan Sebastian Jaguar. That's when he goes undercover. Brad Larson was also one of the players that belongs to a very small group of dudes who were drafted twice.
There you go, alongside your favorite player of all time, currently for the Dallas Stars,
Craig Anderson. I don't know that name. That man's never existed. What's next on the run sheet?
Final thing that we had to talk about here, just really quickly. The newest team in the ECHL, which again is a league that is now near and dear to my heart ever since the inclusion of the Maine Mariners. But the ECHL has done a little bit of expanding recently. And Deej and I, of course, have loved to talk about random minor league teams. We've done that before, especially on the Patreon exclusives. And Deej, now as of late, again, they've added in a couple of teams, and I want to talk about this because we haven't seen expansion since 2018. Newfie Growlers, Maine Mariners. The first team that was announced a few weeks ago was the Iowa Heartlanders, and their lovely, lovely logo, which is essentially an elk. So,
well, I think I brought this up where the issue is the elk is just too sexy. There's like a real issue with this elk. Like it's just they made it way too sexy. And I'm not wrong. I think it's like, I know that sounds like ridiculous, but just look at this. There's just something about, oh gosh.
So with that, the Heartlanders are going to start play in 2021, this upcoming season. There's a team joining in 2022 in Savannah, Georgia. We don't know the name of that yet, but the new team that was announced as well, joining the league in 2021, from lovely Three Rivers, Quebec. That's right. I'm not saying it in French. You can't make me.
I believe it's Trace Rios.
Affiliated, of course, with the Habs and the Laval Rocket, we have the new Three River Lions. And Deej, they unveiled one of the best logos in sports. Holy hell. You are going to see, if you play NHL 21, you are going to see this logo everywhere in HUT and in EASHL. This logo is incredible. Let's hope they don't ruin it with god-awful jerseys like they did when the Habs AHL team was the St. John's Ice Caps, and they just had them wear garbage-ass jerseys for one of the best logos in sports. So let's hope that the Lions here have one of the best jerseys in sports to go along with one of the best logos, because my God, it's so good.
I mean, it's a really good logo, but at the same time, like, because my first initial reaction to it was this logo is sick. And then I kind of stared at it for 15 seconds and I was like, this kind of also looks like someone skinned a lion and made a weird mask out of it and just like left it on the floor. So it walks a very weird line where there's no wrong answers, but I think it is a great logo.
I mean, it's a fleur-de-lis with a lion's face. It's a fluffy fleur-de-lis. It's ridiculous.
You could also, though, tell me it's Buffalo Bill's lion mask, and I'd believe you.
It's one of those sexy masks for a masquerade party.
Listen, okay, listen. They know that elk is too sexy. The alternate logo is a rose. The alternate logo is a rose. They know that elk is there to tango.
So yeah, we wanted to give credit to that because goddamn, so good. With that, DH, fuck it, whatever. I've held off on talking about it for long enough. Let's get to the playoffs, and we're gonna start off with the Bruins and the New York Islanders. Now, I have to mention this. I think the majority of you might know. We'll see. On Twitch, the night of Game 6, I went on, I wouldn't call it a rant, a tirade, a tangent, but I went on an hour-plus long soul cleansing of just here's all of my thoughts on what happened in that series, what's next for the Bruins, etc. So while this episode is technically going to be a little bit shorter, I do encourage you guys to go and watch that video on the YouTube channel. Of course, it's Tougie24 on YouTube. I do encourage you guys to go check that out if you want like a full recap, because Lord knows I don't have the mental capacity at this stage to go through and live those emotions again. I just can't do it, but we will still talk about it. Obviously, Game 5 and 6, a big topic of conversation was officiating. Game 5 especially, but as you know, from this podcast, from that video, from my streams, from Twitter, I'm not one for sitting here and blaming the refs. It's just not worth the trouble. But Bruce Cassidy did go through and blame the refs, and it was fined $25,000 for it. And in my opinion, and I said this as much in the video, it was the dumbest thing Bruce Cassidy has done as head coach of the Boston Bruins, and the biggest mistake that he possibly could have made. The reason for that, of course, Game 5 was in Boston, Game 6 was not. And you fed what has become one of the best atmospheres in hockey. Nassau right now with that fan base, and I talked about it in the video as well, what they have done. Going from thinking we are boned once John Tavares left to Barry Trotz is here, and everything about that organization has changed. Everything. The product on ice, the fan base, it's been a revolution for that organization. And Mr. Cassidy decided to feed them the Saints comment. The New York Saints. And that was thrown back in the Bruins' faces all goddamn night. There was some questionable officiating moments in that sixth game. You know, Charlie McAvoy getting hit high. But at the end of the day, again, officiating goes both ways. And the bottom line is the Bruins weren't good enough to win. And they lost that game really 4-2, 2 empty net goals, 6-2. And it was, even now, you know, a few days on, like I felt okay yesterday. I'm like, all right, it is what it is. But now today, talking about it again, it's just such a lost opportunity because it felt like the team just kind of quit or ran out of gas. And look, like I said, you can blame officiating if you want to. You can blame injuries, but every team has injuries. You just got to sit there and hope it doesn't happen to your key players at the wrong time. The Islanders won this series in 6, and it's what they deserved. And I mean, Deej, your thoughts here, I guess, before we kind of go into a further mini Bruins post-mortem, I guess, because obviously we'll talk about the Islanders a little bit more in a moment.
Well, it's like I said last week, right? It's not even just Bruce's comment that's so bad. Well, it's not even that he got fined. It's not even that he gave ammunition to the Islanders that's so bad. It's that you give a shitty message to your team. It's that, it's like I said, that's not the attitude you want going in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how it's done. And then you look at the curses on this franchise, right? You look at Jeremy Jacobs, who didn't pay his workers in the pandemic. And all the players had to get together and do it. You look at Johnny Busick locking that bear in the stadium. #free blades. And you look at this season, and in a weird way, it feels like a waste, because you had this ability to establish your identity as a franchise and continue to go deep on a very talented team that was revitalized with the addition of Taylor Hall. You defeat your old captain in the first round, and it had all the makings of a storybook ending, and then you're left with, I guess the highlight of this season happened on April 13th, when Kevin Miller delivered a Dragon Ball Z-esque Kamehameha Piccolo strike to Tage Thompson, sending him flying 30 feet into the stands.
It's true. It's a true story.
Thank God there were no fans in attendance because of the crater he left there. So it's just, for me, it's just really disappointing, because as all fans of South Florida sports, you hate New England sports, right? Like, there's the Bruins and Panthers don't really have an established rivalry, but the Dolphins and Patriots do, the Celtics and the Heat do. And then, they just come here and they drive on our fucking roads. Ridiculous. And so I don't know. So for me, I don't know. Why? I wanted to see this Boston team play this Lightning team, because I think that would have been some awesome hockey. And then Bruce Cassidy ruined it. Jeremy Jacobs pissed off God, and Johnny Busick locked that bear in the stadium.
So for the Bruins, then, like I said, I go fully in depth on my entire thoughts on the team, what's next. And obviously, one of the big talking points here that we will discuss here, instead of deferring you to that video, which again, you should definitely watch. I'm actually really proud of how that kind of rant came out, because for once, when you go on an hour-long rant, you always think that you forgot to mention something. But no, I hit on every point I wanted to hit on. The big talking point coming out of Game 6 now is, would it have been better for Jeremy Swayman to start? Because the word is out, Tuukka Rask, whose contract is up, that's one big topic of conversation, had a torn labrum in his hip, and he is going to undergo surgery. He would be out until February or January at the earliest, which raises a lot of questions, obviously, over where he goes and what is in his future. Is a team going to be willing to take a chance on him if he's not going to be available until the midway point of the season, other than Boston, with him on a reduced salary? And that certainly changes the question over, what's the Bruins goalie situation, right? Like, do you look to bring in, you probably won't bring back Halak, but somebody like a Halak to run with Swayman. Basically get your own Craig Anderson for this season until Tuukka's back, if you bring him back. There's just a lot of questions. But Deej, the question of what's next, for the Bruins in goal, but also, did they make the right decision in Game 6? And I tend to trust Tuukka. I tend to trust the coaching staff, the medical staff, that if he wasn't good enough to play, that he wouldn't have. This is what happens. Hockey players play hurt. Nick Ehlers mentioned, I think, having a torn labrum as well. So,
this is going to be difficult to talk about, A torn labrum for a goalie, nobody talks about this. It's a career ender. You got 3 years to come back from that. The most recent goalie to tear a labrum and have it surgically corrected was Roberto Luongo. And he was not himself for 2 years, and he came back. He absolutely sucked and then retired. Rask is younger, so it might be okay, but that is a very difficult injury to come back from, especially for a goalie. So that's the exact injury that Tyler Seguin had, was a torn hip labrum, because it's literally just for those of you that don't know what a labrum is, you have 4 of them in your body. They're basically these cartilaginous cups that keep, yeah, that's right. I said it again, cartilaginous. We
Name of
won
the episode.
That's right. You owe me $10,000. I had a bet with somebody. So anyway, basically it holds it holds your hip in place, or it holds your shoulder in place. Like, you might also hear your arm socket. Like, it's very common for hockey players to tear their shoulder labrums because, you get hit or whatever. I've torn mine. Common. Your hip labrum, though, is a very difficult surgery to come back from. It took Tyler Seguin about a year just start skating again, and you can see that he's, like, I saw on the ice, he's still not 100%. So when you take a goalie that needs to be hypermobile in the hip regions, you want him to take as much time as possible to come back, because that is a difficult injury to recover from. Because basically what happens is the cup that holds your hip in place is now torn, and there's instability, and your hip's constantly dislocating. And when you are a goalie in the modern NHL that requires the butterfly style, you need that to heal to 100%, and you will never be 100% again. So you need it to heal as good as possible. So I guarantee you, even with the surgery, even with him coming back in January, February, Jeremy Swayman is the Bruins starter next year, no matter what.
And I talked about that in the video, right? The other options, if Tuukka's gone, it's like, do you bank on Swayman and like a Chris Drieger, or do you look for another kind of more veteran presence like Jonathan Bernier? Again, went a lot more in depth on that. It is kind of a shame I couldn't save it for the podcast, but hey, what are you going to do? Interesting note as well. Shout out to Brad Marchand, who has now gone 3 full seasons without a suspension. Talk about highlights on the season. So, man, it's just it's rough, But it's one of those things where, like I said, it's just there are no excuses. I mean, sure. I don't think anybody can disagree that losing the amount of defensemen that the Bruins lost due to injury is a viable excuse, but it happens. It happens. I view that as an it happens situation more than, well, if this didn't happen. It did, though. It did. And yeah, guess what? Not too many teams, if any, are going to win when you're missing that many starting defensemen on your roster. So it just wasn't meant to be this year.
Yeah. And Boston's also in a weird place where there's not a lot of, the team's the team. The team works. It's a very good team, but it's not like, oh, next year we're going to have this guy.
They have one of the most barren prospect pools in the system at this stage, which is obviously a result of them being competitive as they have been for so long. And I talked about that as well, right? Like, they have the ability to go in any direction they want. Go for it again next year, retool, fully rebuild. They can do whatever they want. Like, they have the draft picks that, if they want to make some moves this offseason, they can do it. Like, for a team heading into the offseason, it's not as if they're at the end of their window like they were before, and you have all these expiring deals with players who are going to get pay raises in your boned. Like, they are okay, no matter which direction they decide to go. It's just, what direction are they going to decide to go in?
Yeah. And it's weird. I think it's a very weird situation for your team to be in, where you are continually one of the best teams in the league, but you are very obviously not going to be the best team in the league without one or two small changes, but there's no resources to make those small changes. So to me, the Bruins are simultaneously the most interesting and most boring team in this offseason. Because if they do make a move, it's going to be fascinating. And I think the thing you have to look forward to is, okay, so what does this team look like after Taylor Hall's been with them for multiple years and develops more chemistry? And you hope for that, but then at the same time, you've got this other side of the coin where Bergeron, statistically, although he is not, is going to start showing his age soon. So I don't think it's a bad time to be a Bruins fan, but it's kind of like being a Seattle Seahawks fan in a weird way, where you have a really good team. You just know that you're missing a piece to push them over the edge, and you don't see that piece being acquired anytime soon.
Pretty much. So with that, we'll move on, and we will talk about Tampa and Carolina next, as Tampa took Game 5 by the score of 2-0 and won the series 4-1. We will talk primarily about Tampa later on, but we can pretty much jump straight into the Carolina Hurricanes post-mortem here, which I think overall, Deej, I mean, I don't. Here's the thing. We'll talk about Dougie Hamilton first, because in a way he's been taken out of context in that he said, man, this Tampa team is amazing, but we also lost to a team that's $18 million over the cap. And, that's the common thing to kind of discredit what the Lightning are doing here. This is from Corey. I think it's Masiak or Masasak. I'm not sure. But he mentioned 8 NHL teams went to at least $85.5 million in cap expenditures in a league with $81.5 million of a hard cap. You have 8 teams that went over. You can't blame Tampa for doing this. Like, it's a possibility. So yeah, of course they're gonna do it. They're gonna go for it. Why would they not? Like, I don't think you can sit here and fault Tampa for taking advantage of a system. It's almost as if, and it's screw. I don't know if this comparison exactly lines up, but to me, it kind of reminds me of the whole thing going on about taxing the rich. I mean, shit. If you're Elon Musk, if you're Jeff Bezos, and you don't really give a shit about the people working for you and only care about your wealth, then yeah, of course you're going to take advantage of it. Of course you are. It's up to, everyone around you and, lawmakers and shit like that to actually, make things right. I'm not surprised that Tampa is saying, we'll do this. We're not breaking any rules. Who cares? I mean, that's not to say, I know there's been a lot of talk about, Kucherov's injury. I have no doubts Kucherov was actually hurt. But, yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't view what Tampa's doing as an issue. I just don't.
Well, so that's the other thing, too. Somebody made a brilliant Reddit comment where they basically said, okay, so let's say this is an issue, right? Let's say that Tampa being 18 million over is this horrible thing in the NHL. What can the NHL do to prevent that? And the answer is, how many times from now until the end of hockey, until a time in the future where we're playing gladiatorial Batman lacrosse from Batman Beyond or whatever, and hockey becomes boring, how many times is a team going to have 2 star players that are out for the whole season and then suddenly come back for the playoffs? It's just such a ridiculous thing that is an insane coincidence to happen, is why I don't think this is as big of a deal as I initially did when I was on the losing end of it. And so when I look at Dougie Hamilton's comments, I think of something that someone said to me, and I've heard a couple of times throughout my life, and I always think of this, and that's, shut up, Doug.
Yeah. Got me off guard. Just shut up, Doug. But yeah, I mean, I just don't view it as an issue. So anyway, I said we were going to get into the Carolina postmortem. Suppose we should. It's a good team that ran into a better team. Yeah, ultimately, I think the decision to move to Peter Mrazek was sound logic, but it failed. And, it's unfortunate for them. But I think, you look at how good that blue line was on paper. It's still an evolving roster. Whereas Tampa's a team that's already gone through those growing pains. I just don't think there's too much to discuss in that way. Like we all know, or maybe we don't all know, but Deej and I both know. I mean, look, they're set up in a good way. Like they have all their draft picks over the next 3 years, essentially. This offseason, the biggest concern, obviously like Warren Fogle is an RFA, McGinn, Martinook, Cedric Paquette. The bottom line is you have
Svechnikov.
Exactly. You have 3 big players. I'm going to say 3 big players at this point because Jake Bean played really well this year, and he's an RFA. You have to worry about RFA Andrei Svechnikov and UFA Dougie Hamilton.
And RFA Alex Nedeljkovic.
Oh, God, yeah. Who I think would get... He's going to get Reimer money. Like, Mrazek and Reimer were both making between 3 and 3.5. And that money's basically going straight to Alex Nedeljkovic. He'll get the Tristan Jarry contract, I'm sure.
I think he's going to negotiate his way to 5.5, if I'm honest with you. I think this goalie market is currently so fucked. And I mean, what are they going to do? Like, you know what I mean? This team has no goalies on contract next year. He had the 3rd best save percentage in the league. He has all the cards. I think Carolina's in a really bad spot with, I've been calling him Ned because that's easy for me. I think he holds all the cards in this negotiation, and I think, why would he take that? Why would he take 3.5? Why wouldn't? You could easily see, and this is actually really fascinating, and I hate bringing this up because it sounds like such a weird fantasy thing because it never happens. If an offer sheet does happen this offseason, number 1 target, Alex Nedeljkovic.
He'd be up there for sure. Yeah, it's a tough spot, right? It's a tough spot in terms of just how things are lined up right now for Carolina. There's going to be changes to the roster. I think, a big issue too is Rod Brindamore still hasn't re-signed. So this has the potential to be, the offseason that really set them down the right path, or an offseason that ultimately set them back a little bit in terms of their pace and how quickly they get to, if they do at all, to where they were looking to go. We're just going to have to wait it out. I mean, we said a lot of teams have a real interesting offseason ahead of them, in Carolina as well, especially too. Hey, you're going to lose a player in the expansion draft, and I would not be surprised, by the way, if Carolina is throwing draft picks that, like I mentioned, that they have to the Seattle Kraken to get them to take Brady Shea. Because that Brady Shea, or even the Jake Gardner deal, one of those two has to go. Jake Gardner is making slightly over $4 million still, which, yeah, that's a bit too much for Jake Gardner. I don't think that's shocking to say. And then Brady Shea as well. I still can't believe the Rangers got a 1st-round pick for him. Brady Shea is just, no. He is a PK specialist, and that is about it. So I think it's going to be a really interesting offseason for Carolina now, as if it wasn't going to be already.
Especially if Jake Gardner doesn't waive his no-trade clause.
Modified no-trade. Fair enough, yeah. God, yeah, they might have to. So there you go. Brady Shea would definitely be gone then if they can't get him to waive it. So we'll see what happens there. That leads us then to the first of our final 4. It is Tampa and the New York Islanders. Now, Deej, in our bracket challenge, I successfully failed to correctly predict a single member of the final 4 teams. Like, I absolutely botched this bracket. Like, incredibly botched this bracket. As it is, out of all the first-round matchups, I only got 4 right. So I was abysmal in this bracket challenge. I have a total of, I think, 40 points, which puts me out of 132 entries, tied for 103rd out of 132. It was not a good day for me. And shout out to whoever KW or KY, I guess KWHY, W29, who has our lowest point total so far with 10, whereas Deej is tied for second worst with 20 points. Oh, God, I thought I did bad, and then I just saw Deej's bracket. Deej, who managed to get 2 first-round predictions correct, and that is it with Colorado and Boston. You also didn't get a single Final Four. Oh, no. Deej, do we not know what we're talking about? Are the comment sections correct?
I think I'm just gonna start. What did I do in my Florida Panthers official bracket where I'm doing significantly better?
I don't know,
I
man.
apparently predicted Vegas correctly. If there's, I did okay. I picked Montreal as a gag in that bracket. Montreal and 7 extra points. So here's what I think. I think we're going to we're gonna figure out. I mean, someone's gonna win a prize, right?
Yeah.
That prize gets shittier the worse I do.
So with that, again, this upcoming series, Islanders and Lightning, it's a rematch from last year. I mean, Deej, it goes without saying the Tampa Bay Lightning are favorites, right? You have what has to be, no disrespect to the President's Trophy winners in Colorado, you have the best team on paper against arguably the best coach team, and a team that has embraced their identity, like in terms of the idea of being all in, like they are all in. I don't know how this one's going to go. I refuse to doubt the Islanders, even though the Tampa Bay Lightning are very much favorites.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, right? I was talking to my dad on the phone today. We were talking about this matchup. And, Tampa and the Islanders play the same game. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. That Tampa very much plays that sit back, counterpunch, wait for you to make a mistake and score, where they are mostly focused on preventing high quality scoring chances. And that's the game that the Islanders play when they win games. So I think what we are looking forward to here as fans is when we see these two very well coached teams that both play this very similar system, is I think that we may be in for some of the most boring hockey in history.
Could very well be.
I mean, that said, though, and this was my final point when my dad and I were talking about it, is that these teams play the same game. Every single position on this New York Islanders roster, there is somebody that plays that exact same spot, but better on the Tampa Bay Lightning roster. And for me, I think the Islanders might steal 1 or 2 games. This does not go to game 7. Tampa Bay in a maximum of 6.
Clip it, everybody. Clip it. Throw it back into his face when the Islanders win. Go Saints, go. Deej, our final series here to talk about that has concluded, of course, with the Final Four set. Colorado and Vegas. As Vegas took Game 5 3-2 in overtime, and took Game 6 6-3, winning the series in 6, winning 4 in a row. It was not all that long ago that we saw a 2-0 series lead for the Avs, where they completely dominated, and unbelievably, they just fell apart.
It's so weird. They had third period leads in 2 of these final 3 games too. Holy shit. What do you do here? This is, in a way, this is almost worse than than the Bruins situation because your talent's still so young. You're not in a holding pattern. And it's like, well, this was the year. Like, we should have won this year. And now Gabe Landeskog's going to go play for the Oilers. Nathan McKinnon's going to request a trade to Montreal to be close to Halifax. Just everything's going to go to shit. And so I say all that jokingly. I got ahead of myself there. The thing that's going to happen to this Avs team is the absolute worst thing that can happen to a team that is built like this, which is they're going to assume something needs to change, and then they're going to change something. They just got unlucky. Realistically, there were 2 half periods of hockey that cost them a cup this year, at least in my eyes. And they're going to tinker with a lineup that, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best lineup I have seen in the NHL in the last 10 years. This team's insane, and they're going to move stuff around because they feel like they need to. And I think any move they make hurts this team at this point because they're just that good. How do you improve on this? You don't.
They almost have to do something, though, is the problem. Now, it's been mentioned, Colorado has not advanced past the second round since 2001, 2002, excuse me. So since the 2002 postseason, the Avs have not made it past the second round, which is absolutely insane. It continues their streak of being the only Western Conference teams, alongside Minnesota and Calgary, to not make the conference finals, apparently, after the 2005 lockout, which, again, is ridiculous. And
that many teams? What? That's crazy, actually. You would think there'd be more teams, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, apparently it's just them, Minnesota, and Calgary that have struggled to that extent. And the Avs have lost in the second round for the 3rd straight year. And as President's Trophy winners, they now join the list. It's now the last 3 President's Trophy winners who have exited the playoffs by losing 4 straight games, which is absolutely absurd. And with the Avalanche's loss, the President's Trophy winner has been eliminated in the second round for the 6th time in 8 years. By contrast, from 94 to 2013, that had only happened 1 time. So unfortunately for Colorado, I think they're in that situation of, well, again, for the President's Trophy, first and foremost, I mean, this league has more parity than it ever has before, which is why you're seeing a stat like that in terms of the President's Trophy winner failing in the playoffs.
I do want to point out a stat that I looked up a couple weeks ago, and I've had sitting on my desk because I was like, I can't fucking wait till this comes up on the show. I'm so proud of this stat. Did you know, in the history of the NHL, and this is consistent to the last few decades, so it's not like this is heavily weighted by the original 6 era or anything like that. Since they have been awarding the President's Trophy, the President's Trophy winner wins the Stanley Cup over 25% of the time.
I can't say I did.
Which it seems, I mean, honestly, there seems to be this like general statement that President's Trophy winners just don't win cups. Like that's like nobody ever wins the President's Trophy winner and then a cup. And it's crazy to think that if you walk away with the President's Trophy, you have above a 1 in 4 chance of walking away with the cup that year. And I think it's very interesting because you don't ever really see it like that, I guess. Like whenever people are talking about the President's Trophy, I know I've never heard it talked about like that, where you have a 1 in 4 chance of winning. I always hear it talked about like, oh yeah, the President's Trophy winners, they just never win the cup, when that's very much statistically untrue. So I don't know. Fun fact of the day.
Before talking about the rest that we have to talk about here, you look at the Avs roster here. And Nathan McKinnon said this, and then we'll get to another Nathan McKinnon thing in a minute. This is from Peter Baugh, who mentioned McKinnon stating, "There's always next year. I'm going into my 9th year next year and haven't won shit. I'm motivated. It just sucks," which led to Adrian Dater saying the infamous, "So have you guys thought about just saying, fuck it, let's just win this thing?" In that nonsensical moment of him just stuttering and stammering over everything, which was hilarious. I'm not going to take personal shots at Adrian Dater, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they've thought about saying, boy, I'd like to just win this thing. Pretty sure that's crossed their minds. But Deej, as you mentioned, Landeskog is a UFA. Brandon Saad's a UFA. Belmar, Soderberg, and then a bunch of depth options. But on defense, Patrick Nemeth is up. Philip Grubauer is up. Matt Calvert was on the IR this year, but that deal comes off. I mean, yeah, this team's going to undergo changes. Similar to that thing that we talked about with the Washington Capitals, though, right? Eventually, the question becomes, can you make the right choices at the right time? For the Caps, it eventually worked out. Where, hey, you thought Mike Green, Alex Semin, and guys like that were a part of the core. They weren't. Eventually, again, it worked out. That's all well and good. Can they make the right choices at the right time here to get this to work out for them, though, was the question. And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. And then what do you do in net next year? I think that's an interesting question.
Like, do you trust Grubauer to be the guy, right?
Well, he's a UFA.
Well, that's the thing, though, right? That's what I'm saying, right? Do you trust him to be the guy?
Oh, and pay him what he's likely going to command? You mean
4, 5, 6 million? I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean he's had 2 good seasons. 3. We'll give him 3. I don't know. I don't know if you do, because he's never even played half a season at these numbers because of the 2 shortened seasons. I don't know if you. I think that might be a bad move, especially when you can just offer sheet Alex Nedeljkovic.
Yeah, and then you also have the question of what happens with Nazem Kadri, who missed the entirety of this series, and what would this series have been had Nazem Kadri been available? And obviously, we don't know the answer to that, but you'd like to think that it would have gone just a tad bit better for them had they had the guy who was supposed to be that solid middle 6 center option. So,
yeah,
Colorado, and it's been that common theme with every playoff team, really with every team in general, guys. They have some serious questions to answer.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. And then you look at Vegas, right? On the other side of this. Marc-Andre Fleury can hand the keys to the Montreal Canadiens.
So that brings us.
He can do it for the homeland.
To our final talking point. Vegas and Montreal, the other side of the Final Four. Who the hell saw that coming? You look at this. For Vegas, obviously heavy favorites. Deej mentioned Marc-Andre Fleury, who is now 4th all-time in Stanley Cup playoff victories, behind only Martin Brodeur, Patrick Waugh in first, actually Brodeur, Fuhr, and now Marc-Andre Fleury. But on the flip side, it's Carey Price, where, again, playoff Price is apparently a thing. Leads all goalies in save percentage in the playoffs since 2013-14. Hasn't played that many games in those times. So, hey, at the end of the day, Deej, I mean, again, you look at it. Vegas is obviously the better team. They expected to be here. Everyone's prediction is essentially Vegas-Tampa in the final. And let's be honest, it would be surprising if that's not the result here. I mean, Vegas, again, on top of the fact that people can't stand them because they're good out of the gates and didn't have to suffer, which, again, was what the NHL was trying to avoid. We've talked about that plenty of times. The idea that like Minnesota survived, that Nashville survived, that Columbus survived, and those teams sucked for years is honestly a bit of a miracle, And I think for you as well, of course, we had Deke Slayer on the show too a couple months back. The idea of having, a fan base get to deal with nothing but hearing, hey, they should move your team. Hey, they should move your team. Hey, they should move your team. This is a much better situation. Whether or not you think they should be exempt or not, they should be, given that,
Yeah.
Again, nobody expected them to be this good. But the moves they've made, they're the favorites here. I will say there was one interesting stat that Vegas apparently was only called for 2 minor penalties that weren't delay of game minors towards the end of that Avs series, which seems interesting.
just as the Emperor has foreseen. Gosh, yeah, that does seem not great. That it's weird, especially when we talk about this weird makeup call culture where basically there's the game management, power plays even out for them to. I don't know. I decline to comment on officiating. And Bruce can learn from me. I don't know. I think that's actually a really bizarre stat that I don't know. That really caught me off guard. I don't know how to even digest that because that seems so unlikely, but I guess I get it.
Yeah. It's a weird one.
Do you know what my absolute favorite thing about this Vegas Montreal matchup is?
Whether or not Marc-Andre Fleury will choose the homeland over his own selfish greed.
I do think that's that is actually the second funniest thing about this because the other thing is much more realistic.
Okay.
The Vegas Golden Knights could very likely be paying Thomas Tatar to score against them.
That's if Montreal plays them or plays him. I mean, the big factor here. Almost had the big fart. I mean, it might be a wet fart from the.
It's like, well, the big fart here.
The big fart here is that it's Pacioretty against Suzuki. The trades that the team made. We're gonna see who it works out for. Again, it sucks because with this Final Four, like, there's just not that much to talk about. Where it's like, okay, you have a heavy favorite against an underdog. The Islanders obviously viewed as maybe slightly more likely to pull this off. I said as much on Twitter. If Montreal makes it to the Cup final, I gotta buy a Price jersey. So we'll see. But I mean, it just seems to be Vegas and Tampa, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can try and hype it up, right? I can be like, that's right. For the Western Conference, we have the NHL's oldest team versus their youngest team. And in the East, we have the team that Denny Potvin played for versus the team he drunkenly broadcasted for. I don't know. That's all I got.
That's all you need. I'm sold.
I'm sold. This is a weird Final Four. And I am so excited for game one of both of these to happen because it's kind of hard to feel out what's going to go down here and what style of game they're going to play. That said, I cannot wait to be so wrong and see Montreal steamroll Vegas. I think it'll be great. I'm also practicing my weird radio noises, and it's not going well.
So we shall see how it all plays out. We'll follow along every step of the way. Again, said it would probably be a shorter show. I do highly, highly recommend that you check out that video that I made in regards to talking about the Bruins as well. Kind of, I guess, an accessory to this podcast. And Deej and I will be back on Tuesday with more of the same. Deej, in the meantime, we're recording this late. Aaron Carter fights Lamar Odom in a celebrity boxing match tonight, and I can't miss this.
Yeah, that's very true. And so next week on Wicked Tougna, we will learn how to catch a sockeye on 5-pound test. That's right. The question you've been waiting for, how to set those fishing records with the prize fish that is the white gum sockeye salmon. So stay tuned next week. And before you go out on that boat, we could capsize. And you'll want to swim fast to shore before you get eaten by a whale.
And spit out and lie about it.
So you should save your balls. Swim fast. Use code Tougie, that's Tougie, for 20% off at manscaped.com. Manscaped, your balls will thank you. Home of the Lawnmower 4.0. That's not all they make. They make balms. They make creams. Turn your groin into the groin of your dreams with Manscaped. Manscaped, your balls will thank you. Once again, that's code Tougie for 20% off. Tougie, do you have any parting words?
I just learned in looking up this celebrity boxing tournament that Aaron Carter has an OnlyFans.
That in no way surprises me whatsoever.
What happened,
That's how
Aaron?
he beat Shaq.
What happened?
Boom, he put it in the hoop like slam. The crowd was screaming out jam. He swears that he's telling you the facts because that's how he beats Shaq. If you're unfamiliar with that song, he has a weird song about beating Shaquille O'Neal at basketball.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.
Well, I do want to say one more
Or
thing,
not.
and I think this is important, and that's the chum salmon are generally people's least favorite member of the salmon family. They don't taste as good as other salmon species. They don't put up much of a fight. Many anglers actually see them as more of a pest than a prize, but they do have one thing going for them, though. Their roe, much bigger and tastier than usual. It's often used to top sushi, even if chum salmon meat isn't. And the issue, though, is chum salmon have the same native range as most Pacific salmon. So stay tuned for Wicked Tougna episode 3, where we learn how to differentiate between the Pacific salmon and the chum salmon.
Did I no-sell that for long enough?
I think so. Y'all be
Awesome.
ready for the expansion draft in no time. You'll know so much about Northwestern fishing culture. I don't know. I tried. This really went off the rails because it's so difficult to identify a chum salmon. Good night.
Tougies Take is a Deej Audio production. Deej Audio, you're listening to it. Copyright 2021. See you next week.